privacy and analytics and CRO. I think after our session, hopefully everyone is aware of why this is important, and this is important for everyone. Maybe not everyone wants to do talk about this. I think internally, I don't know. Depends on the company, I guess. But definitely an important one. So for this topic, first off, we have Aurélie Pols, data governance and privacy engineer, and we have Rick Dronkers, independent consultant in marketing analytics. And as we already heard from Aurélie, I suggest, Rick, what do you have to say about this topic in general? Why are you here? Why are you a panelist?
I guess why I'm a panelist is I've been forced to handle this topic a lot in my profession.
That's how we roll here at the Conversion Hotel.
Yeah. But I actually grew to like it, or at least grew an interest in why it's important, and especially like how can we help clients make sense of actually implementing all these things, or making sure that what they're doing is actually somewhat compliant to what the law suggests you should be doing.
Yeah.
And also, how can you still get the best out of the tools that we all love in our industry, and that have helped us a lot, but not all of them are as privacy friendly as we might want. So
or should.
Yeah, perhaps. Yeah.
And we had a couple of questions already in the app, so I think it would make sense to go through a couple of those first during your sessions. One of them is, so what would be more valuable? Is it setting rules for companies, or should we actually be creating more awareness by the customers? Would that have what would be more valuable? What would have a larger effect?
It depends for who it's more valuable. Are we talking about society in general, or our industry?
For the greater good.
For the greater good. Well, I think parts of awareness have been done by certain supervisory authorities, because part of the GDPR is really reinforcing these rights of the data subjects. And so where I come from, Spain, they have really pushed like crazy to say, please complain about your data processing operations. So I have templates, if you want, in Spanish for everything, which is totally amazing.
So incentivizing people to complain.
Absolutely.
That's nice. Yeah. That's what all companies want.
To use their rights to privacy and to ask questions to companies to say, I want to understand what you're doing with my data, which is one of the objectives of the GDPR. So education of users of data subjects is, I think, for society certainly very important. I talk to my sister a lot. She lives in Amsterdam. She has an Android phone. She uses apps I would never download anywhere, but okay. And we have conversations, and she realized, oh my God, Google is reading my emails. And you're like, yeah, of course. It's an OTT, an over-the-top service. It's not a telco, and it has no confidentiality obligations whatsoever. So what else is new, my dear sister? And she was like, she doesn't know what I'm talking about. So clearly, education and for people to understand what the consequences are of how they use technology, because it's a bit like, I compare it to cereals, boxes of cereals. I don't know if you have children, Guido, but...
One, but he's 1 year old. So
okay, it's fine.
He's not able to do anything.
Yeah, so he's not allowed. But if they watch advertising, I will bet you anything that one of your kids will come and say, I want Cheerios, I want this, or I want that. And as a mother, you're like, no, you're not eating that, or once a week maybe, but this is not going to be your regular breakfast. And the same should happen with data. Do you want Amazon Ring in front of your doorbell? Yes, no, it's your choice. But if you don't understand what it means or what the consequences are about, well, it would be a good idea to start doing that.
And maybe you want it, but your neighbors more hesitant.
Yeah, maybe you do. Well, maybe there are different things we can.
Postal delivery guys.
So yeah. So education of the public, but also understanding by companies who want to use data for their growth, because data is the new oil or whatever you want to call it. is also understanding the risk of fines, the risk of having their data flows being cut by supervisory authorities, or certainly the risk of losing the trust of their customers. So recently I bought water bottles on Amazon because it's cold in the Sierra in Madrid. And I'm very happy to have emails from Amazon to tell me, buy new water bottles. I have 3, thank you very much, I don't need more. And so this issue of advertising in digital is not new. This has been going on for like 15 years now. Seriously, we can't do better? Are you kidding me? It should be better.
But I think it's also a little bit of complacency of it has been easy to just implement tags and not maintain them and just accept the fact that you place this Facebook tag or Google tag and they take care of the rest. And that's how it has been. And there's a big gap between marketers operating advertising technology and the people who implement that technology. And the people who implement it don't care about it. They just got an assignment to implement that tag once 15 years ago or something. You know, that's exaggerating, but that's kind of what I see at companies. And there's a big gap of the people using the advertising technology or the CRO technology or whatever, and not understanding the technology, like what they are implementing, like the tags they're implementing and what those tags are potentially also harvesting besides what they are using it for.
Yeah, it's also not easy because the vendors don't make it easy.
Yeah.
When you look at, I don't know, one of the product features, customer audiences by Facebook. So you look all this kind of selling stuff for technologists and how you implement it. Take a look at the terms and conditions and how it's written. They don't do UX on terms and conditions. That's clear. So
even if they did, most people would still not read them. So that's also a big problem.
It's difficult to find. So we're having like discussions increasingly about what is the responsibility of digital analysts, CRO specialists, and things like that. I think if you recommend a tool, you should at least know where the terms and conditions are.
Yeah.
I think they should go together because it means that if you recommend a tool to a company, you say, from a technology and analytics standpoint, it does this. This is how you implement it. And then for the privacy officer, the DPO or whatever, you have the other bit, which is, and this is what it means from a legal standpoint.
Who here knows where to find all the privacy statements from the tools they use? 2 hands.
Yeah, but it's really difficult to find, and they change. Also, it's something you talked about, the dynamism of it and how things are evolving and changing. It's like you implement it, you Q&A test it, you have a beta version or whatever, or you have test versions. But then how do you make sure that moving forward, the tool is not changed, they don't, integrate pixels with one another, that do something else?
Even like the same pixel that you have implemented 2 years ago, it can contain new functionality today without you changing the code because they're loading a script from their end of the website, not from your end. So you're not in full control. So that makes it really hard.
Do we have any audience questions? Dennis? It's okay.
I'm curious. You work at a tech company as well that sells, I think, analytics kind of software. I work at one as well, and the experience is that the market is not asking for it yet, and yet as a tech company you'd like to explain it, and the opposite response usually is, but I lose 90% of what I used to have. In our own experience, for example, the retargeting snippet now is behind consent for us on Facebook. My marketing team lost basically 90% of that retargeting audience.
Yeah.
We accepted it, but how difficult it is as a tool to kind of balance the loss of potential revenue, yet explaining a feature of privacy which you hope eventually will be part of your core business, but yet is not there yet. I think the balance is really difficult.
As a smaller company, it's easier to make those decisions out of like principle. Like we don't do this. We're focused on privacy, so it's okay. But as a larger company, you have your targets.
Yeah, and I think you work for a company in the US, which is more collect more, and now only the CCPA is like.
So hold on.
Okay,
so let's step a bit back because there are different positions here and different challenges. First of all, so I'm a DPO, data protection officer for a CDP, a customer data platform. called mParticle out of New York. As a product, we onboard first-party data and also anything you guys collect. So Google, whatever, da-da-da. And we allow our customers to link this to our partner data. So it's Facebook, Google, whatever, who we work with. We act as a data processor in the sense that we act on their behalf. We don't decide why they use the data. And it means we don't have these discussions about consent. It's up to our customers to decide with the tools downstream that they use, whether they are going to ask for consent, whether they're going to use other lawful bases, up to them. But it's clear in our contracts, we say it's your responsibility. Now, if you want us to help you with consent or things like that, we integrate it with IAB's consent framework because a big customer asked. We're not super partisans of it, but okay, it's there. We integrated with OneTrust because it was part of it as well, and we have our own consent management. So it means that when it comes, for example, to consent, we support, but we didn't go out in saying it's a product feature or things like that. We did choose to do something else, and it's called OpenGDPR. It's a framework, it's open source, you can find it on GitHub, which basically takes in data subject requests from our customers in digital and passes it on through the pipelines towards our partners. They reception that and work on it, and we get it back, and we serve that back to our customers. So this is where we positioned ourselves. We said, we don't decide about consent, we don't decide the lawful basis, we onboard first-party data. So it means that personal data, or you want to call it PII if you prefer, it's there. We did push for certain limits. We had conversations about this because I worked for DMPs before and was like, no PII. I said, oh, so we take personal data because we're a CDP. Where is the limit? What don't we want? And this is where it gets interesting because you're an American company, and so the lawyers in America write the rules. And so the law is we don't want sensitive data. Okay? So sensitive data under US law is social security numbers, financial data, and health data. It is not union membership, racial discrimination, religious preferences, or things like that. It's not the same definition as the GDPR. So we have processes in place to say, off of our platform, the sensitive data US, and we trained our teams, our onboarding teams, to say this is sensitive data in the GDPR in Europe. Anything that touches from far or close on this, you escalate. So I have an open door policy. I get questions from the CSMs and things like that. And we make decisions based on what type of client it is, what the contracts say, how they've been redlined. We sometimes send emails back to say, could you please confirm that this is what you want? We escalate it towards certain apps to say, we think you're not compliant. Could you please make sure? And where they write back by saying, we are compliant. So I have that written. If somebody says that that company is not doing what it should, I said, I know, but they told me they would, and it's inside our contracts. So from a technology perspective, it's a balance between what kind of features do I develop? Do I decide to work on OpenGDPR, and this is where mParticle was in 2016? And how do I hedge in terms of contracts? What's interesting now, for example, is OpenGDPR was used by our European customers and is now being opened for CCPA because it's not very different. It's just the notion of sale and things like that. But we are using the GDPR as a baseline to upgrade with potential other legislations that are coming in. So we're very heavy on mobile. And so we get questions like, is there any privacy legislation in Africa? You bet your ass there is privacy legislation in Africa, and they will have little details that will have to append onto the platform. And then it's a cost-benefit discussion, but we realize that everything we built in 2016 now in 2019 makes total sense for CCPA. So it's betting on the future to see, okay, how far does it go? Obviously, if I ask for features that are extremely expensive, the CTO is going to smile and say, I love you very much already, but no.
We also had another question. I think Rick, you might be able to answer. If you're a CRO specialist working at a company, and you've been deep diving in this a bit more, but if my boss doesn't really care about privacy, if my clients don't really care, why should I care?
Besides,
why were you incentivized to do this?
I think besides your own like moral compass, like as long as you're good with what you're doing, I guess you could do whatever, and you can bypass all current technologies, ITP, ad blockers. Like for everything, there is a potential solution to track anyway.
Yep.
So, and then I think, like she already mentioned, like then it becomes a risk-reward kind of thing. Like if you are comfortable with the risk you're taking of not complying with a law potentially, then for sure you can bypass ad blockers. You can extend cookie lifetime past what ITP is doing. You can bypass what Firefox is trying to do. For sure, there are solutions to all of those.
I think the question was partially, I think that's how I read it. Like, okay, if my boss doesn't care, my client doesn't care, would I be personally responsible for this? Is it? I mean,
not a lawyer, don't play one on the internet, so I have no idea. Like, if you as a consultant do that, probably the company is still at fault. Like the company who hires you to do it, they make the decision to do it. Yeah. But for future reference, if you do that and they get caught and they get a fine because of you, then maybe your future consulting services might get some damage from that. Yeah,
but it's interesting because it touches upon criminal liability. Basically, you as an individual, which is where we're not. We're talking about liability of a company, and they could get fined and things like that. The only person I hear about where there's a discussion around criminal liability is Alexander Nix.
Oh yeah.
And seriously, these discussions are not going away. So he might be a pretender to potential legislation coming up, but it's not there, and it won't be for the next year or more. So.
Depends on your level of influence in the company and the decisions that are made there.
No, it's never. For the moment, these fines are company related. They will never be about an individual.
So the answer is you're safe. Go do it. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Brand reputation, as you highlighted, brand reputation is something else.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I do think like that's something to think about, right? If you go full black hat, like in the SEO world, there are also black hat people who are, they have a certain reputation, and if that's how you want to make your money, then that's up to you. But
The interesting thing is also, I don't know what your background is, but I'm not a lawyer.
Me neither.
No, okay. And it means that we're less, I think we're less skitty about giving advice and putting ourselves out there. The lawyers are very much, and here's a disclaimer. Well, I work with a lot of American lawyers, but you're like, come on, guys.
That doesn't help.
Yeah. Could we please move forward? Yeah. And I do understand their liability, but, we need to have straightforward conversations about
I do think that's an important point, though. Like, I help a lot of companies who try to become like compliant. So a lot of things have to do with the cookie banner. And then the first question they ask me is, how should we configure it? And then I'm also hesitant to give like a definitive advice. I'm like, okay, these are websites that are comparable to you that have it configured, and this is how they configured it. Yeah. But I'm not a lawyer. I'm not going to say you have to have the marketing thing on or out, or, think about it, decide for yourself. I can help you configure it and make it all work and actually make all your scripts listen to the cookie banner, which most websites don't do. They just put up a cookie banner and they just fire all cookies without you giving consent. But what the choice that you're going to make in that, that's I think in the end the company should invest in that and make that decision.
Yeah, this is where my position as DPO facing the CMO was pretty easy. It was like the conversation started very simple. It's like, I'm your DPO. I do not want any tracking tools. I suppose you want everything. So now let's have a conversation and find the middle ground in terms of risk. So, but I started there. It's like, I don't want anything on the website.
Yeah. That's what we want to hear, CRO specialist, right?
No tracking.
Any questions?
We have this legislation in place quite some time now, but we don't really see effect of it, in the sense that if you look at the top 20 of Dutch websites, everywhere you see cookie banners which are not compliant, very clearly. Do you know why no
Yes.
action is taken? Or
Yes, I do know. Do you want the answer?
Yeah.
So the GDPR came into force in May 2018. But there's another piece of legislation you might have heard about. It's called e-privacy, which is currently a directive and is continuously in discussions to be a regulation. The Finnish presidency talked about it yesterday again. So we'll have to see when this comes out. The specificity of e-privacy is that it touches upon any kind of inference there would be with a device that you own. So placing a cookie, a pixel, or tracker, or whatever on your mobile phone, your desktop, your Nest, your whatever you want. What I'm currently also seeing is that a lot of these technologies that used to be cookie-based are less cookie-based. There's a lot of server-to-server connections going on. And so one of the questions is also, would that mean that if I do that server-to-server, would e-privacy apply, or would the GDPR apply? And so as long as we're not out of the woods of e-privacy, I think there won't be a lot of enforcement when it comes to digital for the moment. There have just been 2 fines in Spain, like 4 or 5 years ago, not much. And to be honest, as Rick said as well, the technology is not really ready. Yeah? The links between, far from. The links between the consent management tools and then the fact that these trackers are triggered and things like that. What also worries me is this entire discussion about consent. It's kind of driving me nuts. And I suppose you guys as well, so I'm not the only one. Because when you think about it, it's just the start of the journey of a prospect customer. Then what happens? It becomes part of a CRM type of system. It enters something else. So now we're just focusing on that little bit in the beginning, and we're not even looking at the data flows afterwards. And it's also about the data flows afterwards. So once e-privacy becomes a regulation where we will have ideally confidentiality of communications and possibly just consent if you drop something on the device, then we'll also have to tackle not only the interoperability between those little bits and pieces, but everything that goes behind. So there's a lot of work to be done, certainly.
And there's a nice website, actually. It's enforcementtracker.com.
Yep.
You can see the fines that are being handed out. And they definitely get higher and higher and more.
Yeah.
Yep.
Specifically for Spain, I was just looking that we now have 16 fines in Spain, ranging from 900 euros to 250,000 euros. So there's quite some. So you might use that as a resource, saying, okay, what are my competitors or is someone being fined in my industry? If not, then I can just go.
Yeah, yeah. Then, another interesting source is also, for example, the European Data Protection Board. They publish their plenary sessions and what they're going to talk about every month or something like that. So they focus on kids, or there's a focus on dating apps or things like that. For us, it drives also, awareness within the company to say, let's take a look at our client list and make sure that we're on the right track.
But to your point, there has been some activity in the Netherlands, like I think 3 months ago or something. A lot of the Dutch big publishing houses all got letters from the Autoriteit Persoonsgegevens about cookie walls being not
sufficient,
not working at all, or not implemented the correct way. So there is, well, at least there is some activity, but that seems to be it so far.
Do we have a final question from the audience?
Yeah, I do have one question. How do you guys personally feel about data collection? So I can imagine on the one hand, we have marketers who are very enthusiastic about all the innovative stuff that we can do. On the other hand, we have, for example, Amnesty, who this week released a report saying Facebook and Google are violating our human rights. But how do you guys personally feel about that?
Okay, I have a straightforward answer. So I love data by default. And I read this article, and I would call it potty data in The Guardian, about the fact that as women, we queue in toilets a lot. And so I don't have a Fitbit or a fitness tracker, but I would love to have a way to tell Apple, for example, that once again I'm queuing in the toilets because I am at the theater or things like that. So I think data is interesting to optimize our lives. I don't have a lot of choices about this, and this drives me nuts. So there's a lot of stuff I don't do. There won't be Alexa in my home. There won't be Amazon Ring or things like that. But if I see the use of it, I will. I think you also can get addicted to data, and I think that's dangerous. So we should also educate people about that.
Maybe I'm not getting this because I'm a man, but you want to tell Apple that you're queuing for the toilet.
Because us women, we spend a lot of time queuing in the toilets because we spend a lot more time in the toilets, and usually there's the same amount of toilets for men and women at any kind of events.
Oh, that's what you want to use the data for. So
Yes. So
okay.
I want to surface that problem, this kind of discrimination against women when you have a very busy life between your kids, your work, and your career.
I don't think they need data for. They can just look at the lines and then they don't need to.
That's also data.
Yeah, fair enough. But you don't need your phone. You don't need personal.
True.
You can just have a footfall meter. I don't know what the English word is.
Well, the interesting thing is there are standards in the UK. So there was an article about potty data. Seriously, it exists. There are standards in the UK that actually push architects to think about more cubicles for women. But nobody follows the standards. Can you imagine that? You know, be a woman for like 2 weeks and we'll have a conversation. They don't follow the standards.
You don't follow the potty standards.
The architectural standard.
Yeah, that's shitty.
Oh.
Thank you so much. We're out of time. We're gonna go to the next session in 10 minutes, which will be Guy. You all seen Guy already, co-founder, CEO, and Telemise, and we'll have Niels Rijmer, co-owner and data consultant at The Data Story. We're going to talk about personalization. So hope to see you there, and again, prepare your questions.
Thank you.
Great. Wow.